In a world where everyone is shouting to be seen, the most powerful act left is to disappear. Not the disappearance of death or defeat, but the disappearance of transformation. The art of stepping away from the noise, shedding the version of yourself that the world built for you, and returning as something entirely new. Curtis Yarvin, a thinker who moves between politics, philosophy, and myth, once hinted at this. You can't truly transform while being watched. The gaze of others freezes you in your current form. As long as you remain visible to their expectations, you remain trapped in the image they built of you. To disappear, then, is not to hide but to reclaim your sovereignty of being. It is the rebellion against the digital theater, the refusal to perform for the algorithms, the act of silence that becomes more deafening than 1,000 voices. Imagine this. You step out of the social script that defines you, the expectations of success, reputation, validation, and you walk into the wilderness of your own becoming. There, no one claps for you, no one watches, but something deeper awakens. Something real. Disappearing is not erasing yourself. It is the initiation of the self that was never allowed to exist. The version that doesn't chase approval, that doesn't need to be understood. It's what Curtis Yarvin might call a reset of narrative gravity, the act of escaping from the orbit of other people's stories. To truly transform, you must first vanish from the patterns that hold you. You must dismantle the scaffolding of your old self. You must have the courage to delete what was never authentically you. And so, this is where our journey begins, not in a place of chaos, but in the silent void. A space that terrifies the shallow mind, but liberates the one who dares to think. Today we explore the philosophy of disappearing and how Curtis Yarvin's lens of transformation invites us to vanish, rebuild, and return. Part 1. The weight of visibility. Every human being is born into the web of visibility, a network of eyes, opinions, and roles. From the moment you speak, you are seen. From the moment you act, you are judged. And slowly, layer by layer, you begin to perform not for truth, but for validation. Curtis Yarvin challenges this subtle prison of visibility. He warns that modern life is a theater without an exit. Everyone is performing, pretending, curating while the soul quietly dissolves behind the scenes. You wake up, post, scroll, reply, all while thinking you are living, but in truth you are only being consumed. The philosopher's question arises. What happens when the self becomes a product of attention? The answer is unsettling. The authentic you dies. You become a mirror reflecting others' desires, a collection of images stitched by likes and applause. Yarvin's wisdom cuts through this illusion. He doesn't ask you to rebel loudly. He invites you to disappear silently, because rebellion that is seen becomes entertainment. But disappearance, that's power. To disappear is to stop feeding the theater. It's to step behind the curtain and observe how everyone else is trapped in the need to be witnessed. When you vanish from that cycle, something miraculous happens. You start to exist for yourself again. There's a strange freedom in being unseen. You rediscover your private thoughts, your unfiltered emotions, the raw voice that the world silenced. You realize that transformation doesn't need an audience. It needs solitude. And so the first act of transformation is withdrawal, the quiet separation from the crowd's gaze. The decision to no longer explain yourself, to no longer seek understanding. Because truth doesn't need witnesses, it only needs awareness. To transform, you must stop being visible in the way the world demands. As Yarvin would suggest, the visible world is a trap for thinkers, a stage where every idea is diluted for mass approval. But once you step out, once you stop playing their game, you see how small their world truly is. Disappearing, then, is the philosopher's escape route. It's not about deleting your existence, it's about reclaiming your depth. Part 2. The art of self-deletion. Curtis Yarvin once hinted that the old systems cannot be reformed, they must be replaced. The same is true for the self. You can't fix the old version of you. You have to dismantle it completely. You must delete it line by line, identity by identity. Self-deletion sounds terrifying, but in philosophy it's liberation. It's the act of clearing the canvas. You delete not to vanish, but to make room for rebirth. Like fire cleansing a forest, destruction becomes the soil of renewal. The digital age taught us to accumulate followers, identities, opinions, attachments. But true power lies in subtraction. When you remove what is false, what remains is real. Disappearing in this sense is an act of inner engineering. You step out of public identity to rebuild private power. You stop chasing validation and start cultivating presence. This is not isolation, this is refinement. Yarvin's way of thinking reminds us that transformation begins in systems collapse when the old code fails. The new one can emerge when the image of who you are collapses. You finally meet the architect within. Self-deletion means no longer defending your old name, your old history, or your old beliefs. It means stepping into the void and trusting that the new form will emerge. It's the silence before revelation, the cocoon before flight, the pause before resurrection. In disappearing, you don't lose yourself. You meet the part of you that never needed to be found. That's the paradox Curtis Yarvin reveals. You must vanish to truly appear. Transformation is not addition, it is purification. The philosopher's power lies in what he refuses to be, and that's the secret we forget in the age of endless exposure, that evolution requires retreat, and visibility kills the sacred. So the second act of transformation is self-deletion, the radical choice to erase what the world built, and to begin again, silently, deliberately, fearlessly. Part 3. The architecture of solitude. After the act of disappearance and self-deletion comes the emptiness, a silence so vast it feels unbearable. This is where most people turn back. They crave the comfort of noise, the warmth of validation, the familiar rhythm of being seen. But Curtis Yarvin's philosophy invites us deeper into the architecture of solitude, where transformation begins to take form. Solitude is not loneliness. It's not the absence of others, it's the presence of self. In solitude, you no longer act. You observe. You begin to see the machinery of your mind, the endless loops, the recycled beliefs, the echoes of other people's expectations whispering through your consciousness. And slowly you begin to dismantle them, not with force but with awareness. Yarvin's insight into power applies here too. He believes that true authority begins in stillness, not in control of others, but in control of one's narrative. To rebuild yourself, you must become an architect of silence. You must design an inner space where external influence cannot reach, where your identity is no longer a reflection of the collective. Think of it as building a citadel in your soul, a place untouched by time, by judgment, by noise. Each moment of solitude becomes a stone in that fortress. Every breath becomes a foundation of freedom. But solitude tests you. It exposes what was hidden beneath the performance. The insecurities, the guilt, the cravings all surface when the noise stops. That's why many fear disappearing, because disappearance strips away distraction, and solitude reveals truth. Yet only through solitude does the transformation mature. When you can sit with yourself, when you can face your silence without panic, you begin to reclaim your lost authority. You stop asking for meaning, you begin creating it. Curtis Yarvin might describe this as the sovereign's awakening, the realization that freedom doesn't come from escape, but from dominion over the self. And in that dominion, solitude becomes not a punishment, but a privilege, the forge of transformation. Part 4. The shadow of transformation. But the journey inward is not pure light. When you disappear from the external world, you meet something darker, the shadow that you've hidden beneath layers of personality. This shadow is everything you've denied: fear, shame, anger, hunger, doubt. In the noise of society, you could ignore it. In solitude, you cannot. Curtis Yarvin's philosophy often confronts uncomfortable truths, not to glorify them, but to strip illusion. He suggests that progress demands a confrontation with decay. You cannot purify yourself by pretending to be pure. You evolve by facing your corruption with awareness. The shadow phase is where many abandon the path. They discover that self-deletion doesn't erase pain, it exposes it. Disappearing removes distraction, but it also removes protection. Now you see everything, every wound, every lie you told yourself to survive. But here's the paradox: the shadow is not your enemy. It's the unlit half of your transformation. You cannot rise if you deny the weight that anchors you. You cannot build strength if you never face your own darkness. The philosopher's courage lies not in the pursuit of perfection, but in the embrace of imperfection. To integrate your shadow is to become whole again. It's to look into the abyss and see yourself staring back not as a monster, but as potential. Transformation requires alchemy, turning your fears into awareness, your anger into clarity, your wounds into wisdom. In this sense, darkness becomes your raw material. Yarvin's writings often explore the collapse of systems, and your inner collapse mirrors that. When your old structures fall, when your false identities crumble, what remains is the foundation for the new self. That's the essence of philosophical death, and from that death, a more authentic consciousness rises. To disappear, therefore, is also to descend to meet the parts of you that were exiled by performance and perfectionism. And when you finally embrace them, you realize your shadow was never an obstacle to transformation. It was the missing key. Part 5. The Return of the Invisible Man. After the disappearance, after solitude, after confronting the shadow, something remarkable happens. You re-emerge. But this time you are invisible in the truest sense, not unseen but unbound. The world may still look the same, but you no longer belong to it in the same way. You have transformed your relationship with it. Curtis Yarvin might say that transformation isn't rebellion, it's replacement. The old you was governed by external systems, culture, approval, perception. The new you governs itself. That's the return of the invisible man, a being who participates in the world without being possessed by it. You speak, but your words no longer seek applause. You create, but your creations no longer depend on validation. You exist quietly, powerfully, without needing to be noticed, because true power is presence without performance. The invisible man doesn't vanish from society. He moves through it like wind, felt but unseen, influential but detached. He becomes the observer, the strategist, the thinker who acts from awareness rather than reaction. This is the ultimate transformation, when disappearance becomes mastery. You start to realize that all the noise of the world, all the chaos and competition, were illusions designed to distract you from yourself. Now you see it clearly, and you no longer need to win, to prove, to justify. You simply are, and in that state, existence itself becomes a form of meditation. Curtis Yarvin's philosophical edge lies in this quiet rebellion, the understanding that change doesn't require permission. To transform yourself, you don't need to announce it. You simply withdraw your energy from the false and invest it in the real. This invisible return is not a retreat. It's a revolution of consciousness. It's the emergence of a mind that no longer depends on the world's recognition to exist. It's the soul that has died once and come back untouchable. The world might still try to name you, define you, or confine you, but it will fail, because you've already disappeared from their vocabulary. You've rewritten yourself beyond their understanding. You've become what every philosopher secretly seeks, a free mind, hidden in plain sight, and that is the return of the invisible man, the one who disappeared, not to escape the world, but to master it from within. Part 6. The Metamorphosis of Power. When you disappear, when you destroy the old narrative, and when you confront your shadow, something subtle begins to shift. The nature of power itself changes. In the beginning, you chased power the way the world taught you, through visibility, influence, recognition. But as Curtis Yarvin often implies, real power doesn't demand attention. It doesn't scream. It shapes reality quietly, from beneath the surface, through systems, through principles, through clarity of thought. This is the metamorphosis of power, the moment when your energy stops seeking control over others and begins to command your own direction. It's when influence ceases to be external and becomes metaphysical. You no longer compete, you calibrate. You no longer fight, you flow. You no longer beg for space in the world. You build your own world from within. In this metamorphosis, power reveals its truest form, stillness. It's not about force. It's about focus. It's not about dominance. It's about definition. You become the architect, not the actor, the silent strategist who moves reality without noise. Yarvin's lens on governance and selfhood teaches that systems only survive when they maintain inner coherence. You are a system too. And transformation demands coherence, alignment between thought, intention, and action. When those three align, you become unshakable. This is why disappearance was necessary. Without stepping away from distraction, you could never see the distortion of your old identity. Now, through silence, you've purified the signal. Your energy, your presence, your intent. Power in this stage is no longer visible, but it's undeniable. People feel it without you speaking. Opportunities flow not because you chase them, but because your energy has become magnetic through mastery. You've transcended survival. You've entered creation. And yet, this is not the end. It's the preparation for something even more profound. For once the philosopher attains inner power, the question emerges: what now? What is the purpose of transformation if not to serve something higher? Something beyond self? This leads us into the final act, the birth of the new self. Part 7, the birth of the new self. The new self doesn't arrive like lightning. It emerges slowly, silently, through the cracks of your old being. It's not born in the noise of ambition, but in the quiet, understanding that you have nothing left to prove. Curtis Yarvin's way of thinking reminds us that systems evolve through replacement, not reform. And you too must replace the old self, not patch it, not decorate it, not rebrand it, replace it completely. The new self carries no obsession with legacy. It doesn't beg to be understood. It doesn't chase validation. It exists in equilibrium, connected yet independent, awake yet unbothered. It's the philosopher's equilibrium, the ability to see chaos without being swallowed by it. You are no longer a character in the world's story. You are the author of your own script. You design, you construct, you live deliberately, and most importantly, you choose when to appear and when to disappear. That is the final freedom. The new self understands that transformation was never about becoming something greater. It was about becoming something truer. And truth doesn't shout, it resonates. It doesn't argue, it exists. It doesn't demand belief. It simply is. To be reborn in this way is to be untouchable. You faced visibility and survived. You faced solitude and endured. You faced darkness and learned. Now you walk through life with calm authority, not as a mask, but as essence. This is the silent enlightenment Yarvin's philosophy hints at. That the ultimate act of rebellion is inner transformation, not by breaking the world, but by rebuilding yourself beyond its reach. You have become invisible yet infinite, ending the eternal disappearance. In the end, there is no grand revelation, no final applause, no finish line. Because to truly disappear is to dissolve the illusion of endings. You don't conclude, you continue silently, endlessly evolving. Curtis Yarvin's lens helps us see that disappearance is not an escape. It's evolution in its purest form. It's how consciousness renews itself, how thought becomes timeless, how a human being transforms into a force of nature. You disappear not to vanish, but to merge with silence, with wisdom, with truth. You disappear from the false systems, from the shallow games, from the noise, and in doing so, you return to the source of your power. The philosopher's path has always been this: to withdraw from the visible, to refine the invisible, and to return as light. Your disappearance is not your death, it is your rebirth, stretched across eternity. When the world no longer recognizes you, you will finally recognize yourself. When the crowd forgets your name, you will remember your essence. And when you stop trying to be seen, you will begin to truly exist. That is the secret Curtis Yarvin whispers through his philosophy. That disappearance is not the end of your story. It is the awakening of your true beginning. So vanish from what you were, burn the old code, walk through the silence, and return, not as who they expected, but as who you've always been. Unseen, unshaken, unbound, because the one who dares to disappear is the only one who ever truly transforms.